was as if the tides and the rain were on some sort of timetable this morning. The rain stopped, the tide came in to nearly 7.5 feet above the average high tide line, even higher than yesterday. Again, beaches were reduced to ribbons of sand. The waves weren't as large as yesterday's, and residents along Sunset Cliffs reported no damage because of the surf that was pounding against their eroding cliffs. Again, Ocean Beach Pier was closed. And again, from Ocean Beach to Leucadia, a lot of people gathered to watch the waves. In La Jolla, it looked like a Sunday afternoon for all the spectators that were gathered at the children's pool. The Saks Fifth Avenue, a few blocks away, was closed for the day. The store was extensively damaged in last night's rainstorm. At times, that store and the bank next door had 2 feet of water on the floors. By this morning, that water had drained off, as it had at most of the flooded, muddy intersections all the way up the coast. This scene was repeated dozens of times as city and county cleanup crews tried to clear away enough mud to get ready for the next storm. By noon, all the major traffic problems had at least been temporarily solved. Along North Torrey Pines Road, there was ample evidence that traveling this road in a storm is hazardous. Especially muddy, of course, were those streets adjacent to newly graded construction sites. There wasn't much that street cleanup crews could do in these corrals, though, and it was obvious that the horses were less than thrilled about the situation. The estuaries and lagoons along the coast also were pouring tons of runoff into the sea. And what in dry weather is a pedestrian way for beachgoers was submerged in 15 to 20 feet of water. In Del Mar, the low-lying residential areas were well drained off by this afternoon, and work crews concentrated on cleaning out a flood channel clogged with mud, a race against the next rainstorm. This has been one of those storms where people sit around and compare notes. I haven't seen this much rain since 1969, 1952. As a matter of fact, here in Penasquitos Lagoon, locals around here haven't seen this much water backed up in here in at least 25 years. But it isn't all drained off, so some of the people around here are a little worried about what will happen when the next storm moves through. Cathy Clark, TV8 News at Penasquitos Lagoon.
Mission Valley commuters discovered first thing this morning that the road to work wouldn't be easy going. And as the San Diego River burst its banks, some people had to give up their cars to the rising tides. The river rose in predictable places. At the south end of Fashion Valley, the water was 12 feet deep in some spots. During the course of the morning, a steady stream of cars came to the brink, only to be turned back to find an alternate route. For some, however, there was no second choice. Police reported that all north-south routes between Interstate 8 and Friars Road in Mission Valley were flooded out. And for one Mission Valley worker, only the eventual ebb of the water will resolve the crisis the river raised. Laura Wildman was driving along Camino de la Reina when a dike holding back the river collapsed. Her car disappeared under the water, and she spent a good part of an hour clinging to a street sign before a construction worker with a backhoe picked her out of the drink.
And when I got to the tunnel, there was about a foot of water, and my car stalled. And about that time, the water kept really rushing in. Another car came through from the other side, and how they made it through, I don't know. But the backlash or whatever from that other car got my car swimming, and there was enough air in there that it brought, and then there was so much water rushing in that it brought me this far until that sign. And when I got close to the sign, I reached out and hung on until I was rescued. And whoever had that hole digger, that was the most wonderful trip I ever took on anything in my life, was when he got me back to solid ground.
But Mission Valley wasn't the only flood zone. The Weatherby Street underpass leading to MCRD is equipped with emergency pumps in case of flood, but they weren't quite up to the job at hand today. Utility crews had to pump out low-lying manholes, and some night workers at the main post office on Midway Drive finished their shift this morning only to discover their cars were swamped.
I went and looked, and it was halfway up my car, and you couldn't even open the door. So it's flooded very badly, wouldn't start. And I got off at 7:30, and it's 10 o'clock, and I'm still here trying to get my car out of here.
San Diego today looked a lot like a town that had never seen rain before. Very definitely a place that didn't know what to do when the drought ended in downpour. This is Carol Kendrick reporting for TV8 News from Mission Valley.
Shirley Clum in Imperial Beach. The big problem here is that last week's big storm piled up a 4-foot-high sandbar along the beach, causing the beach to slope the wrong way, toward land instead of toward the ocean. At high tide, the surf broke over the top of the sandbar, and not being able to flow back into the sea, it poured seawater several blocks inland. There was a lot of sand in that seawater, and it plugged up some of the storm drains, causing this morning's rain to turn streets into rivers. Some homes and apartments fronting on the beach had seawater standing within a few feet of their doors at high tide this morning, but a city bulldozer cut deep channels in the built-up sandbar and drained the pools back into the ocean. A good part of that sandbar that caused the problem has now been pushed up higher on the beach, where it's hoped it'll stop any further high waves from spilling into the streets of Imperial Beach. Tijuana's coming through the storm in surprisingly good shape, thanks to this recently completed flood control channel. This channel, which runs down the main valley from La Mesa through Tijuana up to the American border, seems to be handling quite easily all the runoff. Of course, we have the usual problems Tijuana always does, what with its dirt streets, a few mud puddles here and there, some traffic stalled. However, no major problems. The police department and the fire department, who handle most of the emergency calls, say they've had no serious problems. So, for the moment anyway, Tijuana seems to be holding up fairly well. This is Shirley Clum in Tijuana for TV8 News.
This is Doug McAllister. Floodwaters from Penasquitos Creek in Sereno Valley carried runoff and mud across Sereno Road, closing it at 2 points. A mudslide covered the road near Interstate 805. Mud and debris closed a 50-foot section of roadway. The mud was 2 feet deep in some spots, and the creek was running at nearly 4 feet. To the west, water covered Sereno Valley Road just outside the industrial park. Heavy morning traffic was diverted, causing tie-ups and delays. In Oceanside, the highest tide in years came at 9:38 this morning, and city crews were filling a portion of North Pacific Road to keep the sea from swamping it. In Poway, the water problems came early. During the night, water meant for a storm sewer came down the side of the hill instead, cutting a 3-foot wide by 3-foot deep path and carrying the mud and water into homes.
We built a dam in my backyard sometime between 6 and 8 o'clock. Finished that, it started raining. I did a few things. It couldn't have been more than 20 minutes later. I went out in the backyard and there was just a river coming down in my backyard.
What have you lost so far that you can tell?
All the carpet in the house, the padding, a lot of tile in the family room. There's a lot of mud damage in the family room.
Are you covered by insurance?
No. Yesterday afternoon, no, it was Sunday night, I heard there was another storm coming, so Monday morning I called the county to see if there was something they could do about it. And they had an inspector out here. He said there was nothing he could do.
After working all last night, Sampson and his neighbors worked through today with help from the Poway Fire Department and Water District, doing what they could with sandbags and fill in case there is more rain tonight. But they say the neighborhood will flood again with more rain. By noon today, the floodwaters near Sereno Valley Road had for the most part receded, and the mud had been cleared from the road. 4 hours earlier, the water here had been at least waist high. A rainfall tonight like the one we had last night, and by tomorrow morning, the waters here will be at least waist high again. Doug McAllister, TV8 News, Sereno Valley.
The worst has passed, for the time being at least. Only a few pockets of flooding remain, like the 2 impromptu lakes at Mission Valley. While the water doesn't appear to have risen any, it also doesn't appear to have receded here either. It's believed a car is still submerged somewhere out there. Throughout the area, light to moderate rain has fallen throughout the evening, but seldom with the intensity that helped cause widespread flooding last night. The elements obviously haven't dampened enthusiasm for attractions like hit movies. The lines are still long for Close Encounters of the Third Kind. On this, its 27th day in San Diego. There have been a few minor traffic accidents reported since late this afternoon, but it appears that motorists have gotten the hint that wet roads are dangerous, and they've slowed down a bit. The area has survived this latest storm, but there's little rest in sight. A new front is due in sometime tomorrow. Doug Oliver will tell us how much new rain we can expect later in this newscast. Dave Cohen, TV 8 News along Interstate 8.